We got about 2 more minutes. If you are just jumping in, we are having some random fun chat here. If you want to pop in the chat, tell us something fun about yourself or what you're drinking while we're waiting, feel free to do that, and we'll get started shortly. Thank you guys so much.
So the crazy thing about this is I actually can see the ShipStation offices from where I'm doing this right now.
That's awesome. Which location? Do you have one near Lamar? Or is it?
We have a corporate office that's on Lamar at 29th.
That's so cool.
So I can look out my window and see the building, not the sign.
Not the sign. Well, that's cool. That's cool that you're so close.
I heard Lamar. Are y'all in Austin?
Yes, I am in Austin. ShipStation is in Austin. Krish is in New York, Connecticut area, correct? Yes. Okay. How about yourself, Michael? Where are you joining us from?
I'm in Birmingham, but I lived in Austin for 5 years back in the 90s.
Oh, that's so cool.
So I heard Lamar and it kicked right in.
Oh my goodness. Oh, you're from the community, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Michael, everybody. He won our drink contest. Michael is really into coffee, and he's really good at it. What are you drinking?
And today, this is one of my favorite mugs here.
Oh, my goodness. Work hard, drink whiskey. That.
Yeah. There's none in there right now, but this is
Says you.
From Highwire out in California, something called Bauhaus. Nice dark espresso with some bourbon smoked sugar in it.
That's amazing. Until you brought that out, I'd never heard of that.
Yeah, we're kind of bourbon fans in this house.
That's a way to be. Bourbon and whiskey have to be my favorite.
Mm-hmm. It's maybe a problem, not like an alcoholic problem, but a collecting and spending problem.
Oh, we've all been there. All right, it looks like it's the magic time, guys. Thank you for sharing with us, Michael, and we're going to go ahead and get started, everybody. So I'm going to, just for right now, I'm going to ask if everybody could just mute if you are not Sean, Krish, or I, and we will go ahead and get started. So welcome. It's good to see you guys. We are going to get started. I am Erin. I am your host, and I manage ShipStation's community, a place where users like you can network, share tips and tricks, and help each other solve complex workflow problems. Today, I'm going to be speaking to the head of industry relations, Krish Iyer, and the CEO of Milk and Honey, Sean Baer. We are going to be doing a Q&A at the end of this panel discussion, so make sure that you submit any questions you have in the comment sections. We really do encourage everybody to ask a question, and as an incentive, we will be giving away 2 Milk and Honey $75 gift cards to 2 lucky audience members who submit a question. And in addition, today is my birthday, which is really exciting. It's also Krish's wedding anniversary today. So at the end of this episode, I'm going to have a surprise for everybody. So we are going to go ahead and get started. And the best way to do that is let's go and do some introductions. Sean, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience in e-commerce?
Sure. My name's Sean. I'm the CEO of Milk and Honey. For those of you in the Austin area, you're probably familiar with us, but we started in 2006, so we just had our 15th year anniversary, primarily as a luxury day spa and salon. So we have grown that business from our first location to 7 locations at this point, with a couple more in the pipeline. So that was our core business. Around 2015, we realized that there was a real need for products, primarily bath and body products, that met our ingredient standards, that were aesthetically beautiful and were really effective, that they were not watered down. They performed really well. And we felt like we could find 2 of those 3, but not all 3. So we found a lab that would help us develop products and have been manufacturing and selling these products on our website and to third parties like Ulta and Neiman Marcus since 2015.
Wow, that's crazy. Well, it's so exciting to have you guys here and to get to talk to you, because Milk and Honey is an Austin institution. So it's so exciting to have you here. So thank you.
Thank you.
And we have Krish Iyer. This is Krish. Is this your second or third time with us?
It's been a few, and they're always fun, and I always enjoy it.
It's always good to have you here, and happy
Thank you.
anniversary.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tell us a little bit more about yourself for those of us who don't know you.
Sure. I'm Krish Iyer. I'm our head of industry relations and strategic partners for ShipStation. I'm one of our few remote employees, although that's starting to change. And I live here in the New York area. Normally pre-COVID, I was on a plane almost every other week, so it didn't really matter where I was based. But now I've been, knowing the joy of working from home like everybody else, certainly for the past year. In fact, I haven't even been in the city in New York since March. And so despite the fact that I only live about 30 minutes outside the city proper, but yeah, head of industry relations, been in the shipping logistics industry for about 20 years. Yes, I did start when I was 5, but split time between FedEx, Pitney Bowes, Neopost, and of course now most importantly being here at ShipStation and helping to work with our merchants.
That's amazing. Well, it's always great to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you both again. And now we're going to go ahead and transfer to our questions. So my very first question, I'm going to keep picking on Krish.
All right.
Krish, we just came out of the busiest shopping season of the year. Was there anything that surprised you about the 2020 holiday season?
Sure. I think there were a lot of things that surprised me. Number one, I think the sheer rapid adoption of new technologies, specifically things like buy online and pick up in store, people looking to adopt things like returns from home. For example, if you're anything like me, I don't usually have ink in my printer cartridge. But that kind of forced behavior of saying that returns rather than things just sitting in my car for weeks, that really and truly would I initiate that process from home. So we saw a lot of that as far as trends, and I don't think that that's going away. I think in addition to that, just the sheer volume of new people who may have been holdouts for certain types of online shopping, grocery shopping. Certainly, I think really we saw just a lot of those trends. And finally, I think one trend that we saw that's not going away is merchants of all sizes, especially on the small to medium, actually engaging in third-party fulfillment, saying, maybe I fulfill from a warehouse or my garage, but I'm going to locate my inventory maybe more strategically with my customers, especially with the long lead times that we saw with shipping that we're continuing to see as far as delays. More important to get that inventory as close to the customer as possible. And finally, I mentioned buy online, pick up in store. I think that not only did we see that as a trend, we're going to see a lot more of that, especially with small to medium merchants making use of that.
Definitely. Sean, how about you for the 2020 holiday season? Was there anything that surprised you this year, or anything you noticed that didn't happen last year that did this year?
Sure. I think there are a couple of things, and just the caveat is I don't see things from kind of that 50,000 foot view that Krish probably sees. So he and I probably have very different perspectives on this. for one, I think one of the big trends was that I think a lot of holiday sales located earlier in the cycle. I think that there was enough in the zeitgeist that shipping was potentially going to be an issue this year, and your opportunities for last minute shopping in many parts of the country have gone away. So we saw a fantastic November. Now, that said, we were still surprised that we set a really early shipping deadline just because we didn't want to disappoint anyone. But sales did continue after our shipping deadline. And the other thing for us, and just this kind of ties into our story, which I'll probably tell a little bit later, this has really been the breakthrough year for us in terms of our e-commerce, and one of our second quarter, so April through June, we were up 800% over the previous year, and we expected that to fall, and it did fall once the hard lockdowns kind of ended. But we just had this question about the durability of growth, and really December, November, we actually saw a fair amount of durability. So how much of that is just changing of consumer behavior, where people normally would pick things up in our locations, versus I think there was some of that. I also think that there is it was just some durability to the growth that we saw, and I think it bodes well for e-commerce in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I noticed that some lockdowns are coming around right now. Have you seen any kind of boost coming from the secondary and third lockdowns, or has it all kind of just stayed the same?
That's a great question. Honestly, we haven't looked on a market by market perspective, because obviously how people behave in Houston is very different, where there really hasn't been a second lockdown versus a Los Angeles. We would have to run some numbers to see if we could pull anything from that.
Oh yeah, definitely. 100%. So what would you say to Krish? What would you say some of the major shifts we're seeing in the e-commerce space right now?
Sure. I think the first thing is, as I mentioned, people becoming more comfortable with doing returns from home. There's been a shift past few years of, okay, can I do them in person somewhere, even if it's going to a location that's not a store for my specific brand, people doing Amazon returns at Kohl's, for example. But we're starting to see the shift to people kind of being able to do that from home. That's one. I mentioned curbside pickup, but I think curbside returns. I see my good friend Jack Swift here on the call, and we talked about it some weeks ago on his webinar, that I do think a trend for 2021 is actually is curbside returns that I think that we'll see. And finally, I think the other thing that we're seeing as far as a trend is, for a long time, if there are shipping delays, retailers may be scared to put that in the listing or upstream for fear of losing the sale. But now retailers are realizing more than ever that both returns policies, but now upfront, the shipping and fulfillment time really needs to be upfront as much as possible, because although you may get a consumer that may feel a little squeamish about the idea of, oh, it's going to take this amount of time, it's a whole lot better from a customer experience standpoint to be as upfront and precise as you can with that, than have a customer that has a certain expectation and then that suddenly catapults to being a lot longer of a lead time or expectation. My anniversary present for my wife, for example, I ordered it a few weeks ago thinking, sadly, I did not order it from Sean, Milk and Honey, but I'll know better for next time. But I ordered it some weeks ago with the idea that I'm being planful. And as of today, it still says that it's slated to be delivered today, 9 o'clock tonight, or by 9 o'clock tonight, but it's still not here. So had I known that management, then I wouldn't have necessarily a bad taste in my mouth with.
I certainly believe that 2020 has been a year where retailers of all stripes have been able to make excuses, whether they're legitimate, that there's just not the mail service capacity to do this right now, or not legitimate in that their standards have fallen. But I think as we move into 2021, excuses are probably going to be accepted less and less. So setting proper expectations becomes more and more important.
100%, 100%. And, speaking of expectations and kind of going back a little bit, everybody knows we're working from home right now, and the beauty industry is thriving. People want to look good on Zoom and stuff like that. Can you share with us how this pandemic has affected your business and what new strategies you've implemented to overcome them and kind of stay away from those excuses?
Yeah, sure. It's interesting. I've looked at some of the industry data, and there are definitely categories that just in the health and consumer products, personal wellness space, and it's actually been all over the place. So there are certain categories, color, makeup, have done really, really well. Other categories like deodorant have kind of fallen off of a cliff. And this is from Unilever, one of the biggest manufacturers of that. I guess people don't, when they're working from home, maybe they don't care as much about being nervous about how they smell. The pandemic, as a business where 90% of our business is personal services that are delivered one-on-one, in close contact with our clients. Obviously, it's been a pretty devastating year. We had to close we closed before the lockdown was mandated here, but someone's echoing.
Reminder, if you're not off your mic.
So no. I'll just keep talking. But there's going to be echoing.
Yeah.
I think that we got that was an incredibly difficult thing to happen to us. But we were really lucky because as a business, we had this other leg to stand on, which was e-commerce. And we've been doing e-commerce since 2005. We started selling gift certificates for our spas online before we even opened our doors. So we've been doing this for a long time, but we were really lucky in that during the initial lockdowns, we had lots of hand soaps and things like that, which were in short order. We had hand sanitizer products that were in stock, which April was the month of just selling every single unit of hand sanitizer that we had in inventory, and then desperately trying to manufacture more of it. But the other thing that we did, which I think maybe is more of the lesson to learn, is our e-commerce business for our company has primarily been focused on the products that we manufacture and sell. So Milk and Honey branded products, which we did all of the R&D for and carry the inventory for. One of the things that we realized as a retailer that had $1 million in retail inventory was one of the best things that we could do to reduce that inventory, because it wasn't needed in those stores that were closed. We figured out how to sell it online. So we met that need of our customers who still wanted to buy shampoo or skincare products or candles or whatever it is, nail polish. And we pivoted really quickly to making that inventory available. So, in a sense, I feel like we got really lucky that we had the ability to do that. And we had the permission from our our vendors and partners to do that. I think that certainly Q2, there also was a little bit of boredom that kind of kicked in, where people were at home, they'd received stimulus checks, they were starting to figure out how to work from home. But when you lose that commute time on either side of your day, you have a lot more free time. And so I feel like we had a bit of a boost of that. I also feel incredibly lucky that boost actually became durable. We had questions about whether or not the customers that we acquired while we were selling some of these third-party brands or hand sanitizer were not going to become regular customers of us. And I believe that we delivered enough of our customer promise that a lot of those have. So I think that there's been, I do believe that you have the overall industry trend where there is just this permanent boost of e-commerce that I don't think is going away. But I also feel that having an opportunity to interact with a bunch of new customers was incredibly valuable for us, and we're starting to reap the rewards of that.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing that. Another e-commerce trend that we've observed, and you kind of talked about this a little bit with the pivot that you need to make, but right now we're seeing that trend of greater personalization and digital experiences. And how has Milk and Honey invested in more and richer and more personalized touches, especially being a mainly in-person business? How have you kind of transitioned that?
Yeah, to be honest, I think it's an area that we could improve upon. We run pretty lean, and not to plug ShipStation, but having great tools like ShipStation allow, if you think about the first e-commerce businesses, they had to build all of that technology in-house with relatively poor tools. Now we don't have a developer on staff, so that is certainly the disadvantage of that, is that creating personalization is a little bit harder. Certainly things that we have done this year, we're using more quizzes as part of our marketing material, where people can help determine what's the right product for, what's your right skincare product, what's your right natural deodorant, things like that, which I think are fun for people. There are great tools for creating them, and it's a pretty low degree of difficulty. We also, one of the things that we started to do this year is we've done a lot more webinar type content and AMAs, where we have activated our customer base to ask questions about their skin, we've done them a lot on skincare, we've done them on medical aesthetics, we've done them on we've had a couple of our massage therapists who are also yoga instructors. And to me, the best part of that kind of interaction is that's true customization, is when people can ask questions and get responses from an expert, as opposed to having an algorithm that maybe gets it right or maybe doesn't get it right.
Yeah, and it also makes your product more it's less of a product, more of an experience with that additional enrichment and education. And that's a really great way to pivot. And I think that's really cool that you guys have adopted that. Moving on to another place where a lot of people have had to pivot, and I'm sure Krish's favorite subject, let's talk about returns.
Sure, of course.
What are some of the ways that brands can manage returns, deliver a good customer experience, and protect their revenue all at the same time?
Sure. So for a long time, brands looked at returns as, because they're ugly, they're messy, and the cost. A lot of estimates are it costs 6 times the cost of the outbound to process a return. That they would intentionally create friction in the process. But much like many years ago, we had that ComScore study that said customers expect free shipping, and that was kind of the point where we all kind of said, well, wait, people really do expect it, and now that's somewhat the norm.
We also found it's not true.
Fair enough. All right. With returns, having either free returns or very easy, flexible returns is incredibly important and an expectation. So answering what you should do. Number one, what we see is, much as I mentioned with the shipping lead times, and it looks like we have a lot of questions on that topic, which we'll certainly discuss, having your returns policies not only in the listing itself, but through the journey into the checkout, and then even after, as you're communicating things like lead times, being able to still communicate returns. And if you can make that process as self-service as possible versus creating a lot of friction in an RMA process and everything like that, we have our own self-service returns portals. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it. Really does add to the customer experience. Because especially in apparel, so many people buy different colors, different sizes, and although for a lot of retailers that's built into the profit model, the reality is you're not going to get the sale in the first place unless people feel comfortable with those returns policies. And the reality is a lot of people won't even, in fact, make the return. But that's really more on the consumer to do. So that's one. I'd say the second is having flexible returns windows. And what I mean by that is, so some of our survey data, we found out that people did Christmas shopping as soon as July of this past year. And that blew my mind. So I first saw some of that survey data coming in September, and I mentioned it to my wife. I'm like, can you believe there are some weirdos out there doing Christmas shopping as soon as July? And she said, yeah, I already did mine in August. Where were you? And so what that told me is that holiday season started as soon as really this summer, because people were afraid of inventory and not having enough stock on hand, and about lead times, which of course, we're seeing a lot in the chat here. So what that does mean conversely is that if that expectation there was to then convey that over the holidays, then what's a reasonable returns window, especially in light of COVID and some of the quality assurance, quality management things like, in apparel that you may have to do, or in health and beauty you may have to do. So I think for the retail, it's really determining in advance, what is that returns policy, what's the method, and really what's that reasonable window this year that they're going to accept a return from a holiday purchase.
Right. Definitely. And as far as the shopping, it is crazy. People have been, since July, back in the day, my mom has been doing this forever. And it's the first year where people don't look at her funny for doing it, because everybody is. Sean, you have an interesting returns policy that I'd love to bring up and kind of have you talk about. I think it's really interesting since a lot of the products you sell are skincare and things like that. How do you handle your returns?
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty easy. We have like a no questions money back guarantee for 30 days. And So even if people have opened their product, it just getting, the alternative to that is you get into contentious arguments about things, which as a vendor, as a retailer, you're never really going to win those in a meaningful way. So we just make it easy for people. And oftentimes when we look at returns, we don't require customers to ship back products. So if they're, if there's not a if there's a quality issue that, like, we obviously want them shipped back, but we sort of operate a little bit on the honor system that people are not taking advantage of things. And one of the things that we do use is Freshdesk, which allows us to categorize issues and try to prevent them in the future, as well as identify if there are customers that are maybe abusing our policy. And I think that looking at that data is the key to not losing a lot of your profitability through returns.
And I think that's a great strategy, because as a consumer, I either want to handle it, or, like, if I can't get a return, it's okay. I'm not ordering that product again. So as a company, kind of taking your side and being like, okay, we're going to take care of this for you. That's a really, really great strategy, because most consumers, if you don't, will just walk away and never think about you again. Yeah, Krish, I saw the finger.
Yeah. What I was going to say is it's a lot easier to have that type of, fast, flexible, free, or even the sugar returns, as we call it, meaning just keep it because you trust your customers. When you're talking about a direct channel sale, like Milk and Honey selling on their own website, it's a little bit different when you talk about the marketplaces and selling your products there, because of course you're talking about being governed by what the marketplace's policy is. Although certainly marketplaces encourage fast, free, flexible returns as well. I'm pretty sure they're not going to complain if you have a sugar returns or keep it type of policy there as well to help boost seller ratings. But it is important to note that your direct channel returns policies in your marketplace, you do have to take those into consideration based on what the dynamics are there.
Yeah. And you're right. It does depend on where you're selling and how that works, and what you're selling too. Krish, we did see this last year a huge desire from consumers to support small to medium sized businesses. Actually, this question's for Sean. My apologies, Sean. We saw a huge desire from customers to support small to medium sized businesses. How have you leveraged that? Have you tried curbside pickups, and what are the challenges that you've been facing as you kind of work with this?
Yeah, I mean, this was part of the pivot that we did back in, late March through June. We obviously emphasized as much as we could that we are a small business where, 60% across the whole business goes back into salaries that are paid into the local economy. So we definitely told that story. Things that we did was we really expanded our affiliate program, particularly to service providers, where many of our clients couldn't come in to see those service providers, but this gave our service providers an opportunity to sell product online where they didn't have to do anything other than share their code with particular clients. So that was one way that we actually even, I think it went beyond local, and it really became about that personal relationship that people had with their service providers. I also mentioned the webinars that we did that really tried to put a face to those things. and we also did some curbside pickup. It was probably a little bit of a back alley kind of quasi legal thing, but back in April and May, before we were able to reopen, we worked with some of our hairstylists to create color correction kits and roots kits for people who couldn't come in to get their roots dyed with their stylist. We took their formula, pre-mixed things, and allowed people to pick up their kits at the curb. So it was a way of building that relationship with clients, and I think it was worthwhile.
Yeah, that's a really cool pivot. And also, just so everybody knows, Sean, can you tell us a little bit about how you pick the people that you're going to support, like the other local businesses that you get in bed with? What do you look for?
Yeah. So the third parties that we sell online, and they mirror what we sell in the store. We tend to prioritize brands. We have really strong ingredient standards, so that's sort of the cost of entry for us. But then we look at story and are we able to leverage the story of a founder or the brand and use that to communicate with our customers. So we can't necessarily, we want stories that we can leverage as opposed to something that maybe feels a little bit more just generic. So that's one of the things that's really exciting for us. This year we worked with a lot of worked with a lot of our Black and Brown employees to help us also identify categories that maybe there was a demand for, but maybe we were a little bit blind to that demand. So we definitely brought on some third parties that had founders that had a different perspective than ours, and that's been fantastic as well.
That's amazing. I love that you kind of incorporate story as a part of your brand and as a part of those that you get. That is a really cool way to be unique and authentic and what makes you stand apart. So before I get to our final question, our Q&A is coming up. If you have not asked us a question, go ahead and jump in our chat and send us a quick question, and we'd be more than happy to answer it. Remember, we are giving away 2 $75 gift certificates to Milk and Honey as part of our giveaway. So if you want to ask your question, now is the time. And our final question for me is a hypothetical here. So let's just say I've launched an e-commerce company and I have very little brand awareness. What are some of the ways that I get started and differentiate myself online? Did you guys get that, or did I cut out there?
Why don't you repeat yourself?
Yeah. Okay. So let's just say I've launched an e-commerce company and I have very little brand awareness. What are some ways that I can get started and differentiate myself online? We'll start with Krish here. Krish, do you have any input on this one?
Sure. Well, I think one of the things is when you're starting out online, there's a lot of upfront marketing costs. Certainly, Sean knows far better than I do as a small business owner. But I'd say that kind of pivoting that one of the ways to kind of start brand awareness, brand loyalty, but to test out your product is selling on marketplaces. So that's one thing that we see in ShipStation is that a lot of people discover new selling channels just by seeing the tiles of saying, oh, Google Shopping, what's that? I haven't tried that before. Maybe I should investigate it. Or, hey, I can my orders in ShipStation and upload them then to this marketplace. So I think if you are starting out as a new brand, then looking at a marketplace strategy kind of helps to decrease some of that risk. Particularly
and
with
red cabbage, roughly shredded.
I'm sorry?
Keep going. It's okay. I think so.
All right. But yeah, I would say an upfront strategy around how you're surfacing your products to marketplaces help to increase your brand awareness and decrease some of the initial risk.
Perfect. That's really great advice. And Sean, what advice would you give from?
I think that the more just being really clear about, and this is just business fundamentals one-on-one, but I think a lot of entrepreneurs are by their nature optimists. So they start to think about how they're going to rule the world, and they have this expansive view of their product. It's often better to just really focus on what you're doing that is truly unique in the marketplace, and then spending the time to figure out who are those. Don't look at a product that 50% of the population might enjoy, but 1%, because you can figure out how to talk to that 1% of people, and it's a lot harder to go broad. So I think it's better to go narrow. Another thing that's helped us along the way is and that you can get through effort as opposed to costs, is press and PR, particularly at a local level. There are a host of publications that are made in most communities that are always eager to tell local stories, and often the reporters will respond to emails or phone calls. So I think that's another way. And once again, as a brand, having a product mentioned in in a national magazine in Vogue would be amazing, but we're also happy to get mentions in Austin Monthly and Tribeza and Houstonia and the like of that, and it's a lot less of an effort.
Definitely. 100%. That's really good advice for anyone starting out. I think the part that I think that you hit on that was really important was start doing narrow, right? Because here's an example. Often I go to restaurants, and sometimes I went to a restaurant and it has every type of food. Like it has pizza, burgers, tacos, and they do a lot of things, but they don't do any one thing well. So I think starting with something that you do really well that makes you stand apart is important. So now we've hit Q&A time, and I wanna start out. I know a lot of people have been bringing up questions about lead time with shipping, and I want to pass it over to Krish to kind of address some of that.
Sure. So look, as a general statement, there is no easy way to sugarcoat this. There are horrific lead times, depending on which carrier you're using, and you have surcharges right now that we're seeing. I wish there was a better answer I could give there, but what I will say as far as what retailers can do are a few things. Number one, I mentioned before, in the listing itself, communicating lead times that you're seeing. That's one. In the checkout and then beyond. I mentioned the anniversary gift and still today's my anniversary, not here. So really having that relationship to be able to be upfront, honest about what they are. You may not know, and that's okay. Your consumer will work with you, but then do you have the tools that can give people that update? For example, the retailer I bought my anniversary present from, if I go into track, then I do see, exactly even a heat map of where it is right now. But a lot of platforms you work with will give text messaging and that sort of update. The second thing I would say is that although free shipping has been the norm, customers are, during COVID, looking at the idea that they may have to pay a premium for certain products. So if you have a diversified carrier strategy, thankfully in ShipStation, you have a variety of different carriers that you can use. Could you potentially give the option to say, all right, our default free method is this, and maybe you're subsidizing for a certain $5, $10 type of upcharge to say, well, the guaranteed delivery is this. So if, for example, what I bought for my wife, a few $100s, I might be willing to pay an extra $25, $30, whatever it may be, just so I could have had the peace of mind, but that option wasn't available to me. So that's what I'd say is that, I mean, frankly, just no way to sugarcoat it, but having a diversified carrier strategy, and that's where in ShipStation we have a lot of different carriers, being able to give your consumer that supersize me type of option becomes really, really important. And so they let your customer dictate what's important to them and what price threshold they're willing to pay for it. So that would be the advice I'd have there. But I wish there was a silver bullet. There's just no simple way to put it. We have bad lead times right now. It's not an easy time. So diversity in your carrier selection, allowing your customer to dictate what the lead times that they're comfortable with, and communicating that. Those would be the steps that I would say here.
Yeah. Sean, taking to you, kind of a similar question, but do you have a sense what the average consumer's expectation for shipping times are before they start getting frustrated with a retailer? For example, I started getting frustrated when something takes over 7 days. Can you give us specific examples of how you set expectations when it comes to shipping, and how you kind of manage that when we are dealing with what we are with lead times all over?
Yeah, I mean, and I'll say this from just an overall business perspective. I think that the fundamental thing as an e-commerce business, and we self-fulfill, other than the items that are sold on Amazon, which Amazon handles the fulfillment there. So since we self-fulfill, having some fundamental standards about how long it will take to box up a shipment, and certainly being able to get things into, whether it's the mail stream or FedEx or UPS, whatever ShipStation tells us is the cheapest thing, is usually what we end up going with. I believe that once you have good standards there, and customers get an update that things have entered the mail stream, then I feel like you're 90% off the hook at that point, because it's no longer your responsibility. That said, when we have seen great amount of stress in, and this primarily has to do with USPS, we have added emails, just additions to our confirmation emails, just setting the expectation that certain things are just slower than we expect, than we hope for. And so that's just about communication.
Yeah, and I think that's an amazing thing to be doing, because as a consumer, I think you freak out more when you don't hear anything. So being on top of it, communicating, I think that's the way to be about it. Sean, if you could go back a year in time, what would you do differently to take better advantages of the challenges COVID brought to the retail market?
I would have taken all of my assets and invested them in Moderna Pharmaceuticals. It would have been and Zoom, those two things. Then I'd be buying an island to retire on. So that's a great question. I think that To be honest, I don't know if we would do things differently. I don't know. I don't think that there was any proactive way that you could anticipate what happened this year. And I believe in the aphorism that lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place. So whatever our next crisis is going to be, it's going to be different. And so I think that the real key is having a team, and this could just be you, or this could be a larger group of people that have the ability to work flexibly, learn lessons quickly, and implement change. The only thing that allowed us to have a successful, April and May, where our core business was closed, was the fact that we were able to kind of nimbly pivot to selling things that were not the core part of our business prior to COVID. And, and I think a lot of people that I've talked to that have had big hits in terms of e-commerce or CPG companies, often often there's an inflection point, which, you could consider to be planned, but is often just has to do with luck that suddenly sends things through the stratosphere. I think that Kendra Scott, this multi-billion-dollar company, she was a jewelry designer who was basically selling things out of her house, and a fashion designer picked up one of her products, and it was on one of the New York Fashion Week runways. And obviously she was cultivating that relationship, but what made her parlay that success into the future was the fact that she was able to take that big gift and capitalize on it by being operationally effective moving forward.
Yeah, that's a great story. Krish, question for you. How will, oh, sorry, I lost my place here. Hang with me. Does DHL have competitive pricing for shipments through ShipStation?
We do. So I'd say check inside of ShipStation in our wallet function. Certainly we have that. But on international, one of the things I should point out is we have our global post service, which is for international, and we have a lot of different flavors of it. And we've launched recently. I may get into trouble for saying this, but I'm just going to go on ahead and say it and then deny I said it later, even though we are recorded. And that is, we have our Global Post Plus service, which is inclusive of duties and taxes, being able to ship. So especially for folks looking to do international, but may not have the tools or the savvy to collect all the duties and taxes up front, that may be a very good option. And that speaks to a question that came up in the chat that I'll address, and that's on Brexit, and it'd be different international in handling the VAT in the UK. Is that Mandy's question on how businesses, a lot of them are actually opting to sell their products on marketplaces, because the marketplace itself is responsible for the collection of the VAT in the UK. So rather than having to collect it up front, they're simply dealing with the marketplace. Or a lot of them, if you're in a platform like a Magento, Shopify, are using some of their tools to collect the VAT up front from the consumer. But it is an issue that's thorny, and frankly, we're seeing a lot of folks that are opting not to sell to the UK because they're frankly a little scared of getting billed back when it comes to the duties and taxes on the VAT. But I'd say the safest way right now is to simply really opt for your marketplace channels when it comes to selling to the UK. I wish I had a better answer on that.
Ooh, that's a good answer. Asking another question that might get us in a little trouble, but I'm asking it because you guys asked it. So when will scheduling carrier pickups on ShipStation be available in Canada, Krish? And it's on this if we don't
I
know.
think that we have it based on some carriers, but maybe not all. So I'd say, honestly, just keep checking back on our knowledge base and knowledge based on each carrier and what their policies are, because those things change even weekly on product additions and updates. So I wish I had a better answer there, but it's just dependent on each carrier.
And also when we launch new things like that, we do push it out through the app. And we do have weekly newsletters that are emailed. But we are really transparent when those things are released. So as Chris was saying, just keep your eyes open and keep looking at our resources. Sean, this question is for you. First of all, people want to know how you add curbside pickup to your site and how you're doing it.
Yeah, so the curbside that we did was a little bit limited, and going to my earlier statement about not having full-time developers on our team, you kind of have to work what you're given with. So in general, the things that we did curbside this year or this past year were the color correction and root touch-up kits. That was a completely email form based experience. And then we just had a staff member using their cell phone to coordinate all of that. We got a little bit more sophisticated around the holidays with gift certificates. So we enabled in Shopify, we have a Shopify store for our products, and we have a Shopify store for our spa gift certificates. For the spa gift certificates, we enabled a curbside pickup option there. So Shopify handled a lot of the functionality of that. And then we just had to set up a way to relay text messages when someone pulled into the spot so things could be delivered through. So that worked pretty seamlessly. I would love to allow curbside pickup for our other locations for kind of the breadth of the products that we offer. But right now we're kind of bound to an inventory system that is tied to the point of sale that we use in our locations that does not play with it as like no APIs that work. So there's no way to actually have real-time inventory. So there's not really an option there. We've always been helpful with customers who call that want to pick things up, but the really seamless, slick experience that you might get with a larger retailer, we just don't have the chops to do that right now.
Makes sense. I mean, you don't want to push too far too fast, but I'm sure as you go along, things may evolve.
Yeah.
Another one for Sean. Sean, what were you using before ShipStation, and what was it about ShipStation that helped you select it?
Gosh, I mean, I don't actually remember what we used before ShipStation. So we have been using ShipStation since 2015, I want to say. So we were probably just putting stamps on packages before that. And just in terms of our e-commerce business, we did not get really serious with it probably until 2017. It was kind of a side project before that. So, but on ShipStation since I can remember. And, at the time we needed something, just our business, the products that we manufacture, we sell to our own stores and to e-commerce, but we also sell them to other retailers. So so we also have to take into account shipments to other retailers. So we were really looking for something where we could figure out what the best way to ship something was, say to Free People or Neiman Marcus in San Francisco or what have you. So we did a little bit of research and it integrated nicely with Stitch, which for a short period of time will be our inventory management system. But they got bought by Square and are shutting down. So, but they integrated with it, which there were only a couple of options there. So it helped focus our research.
Definitely. That's really helpful. I think that's really good information. One final question for both of you guys, and this is going to be a quick, simple question, and this is coming from me. I want you to leave our guests with one word of wisdom or one recommendation that you would give to anyone else who's running an online e-commerce business right now. Let's start with Sean.
Have an experimental mindset. So just when I disagreed with Krish on shipping, we ran back in the fall a experiment where every 2 weeks for 3 months we ran different shipping, thresholds and costs, everything from free shipping on everything to $6 shipping on anything below $50 and a bunch of permutations there. And it helped us figure out what our shipping policy was going to be. So if you have an experimental mindset, you can kind of go beyond conventional wisdom, which is often quite wise, but isn't always exactly right for your business.
That's really good advice. Being able to test things up and work to your brand. I like that. So stay experimental, coming from Sean. And Krish, what piece of advice would you give or kind of words of wisdom to everyone within e-commerce or listening right now?
Sorry, I was talking and didn't realize I had muted myself. So what I'd say is going back to my earlier theme, communicate up front. Don't be afraid of losing the sale. It's a whole lot better to have somebody that may be a little hesitant to buy from you than being unhappy later. That would be the first thing. So communicating lead times and returns policies and communicating after the fact, both of those things in terms of the tracking. And don't be afraid to potentially have to add an upcharge for shipping in order to make your customer happy. It's better to give them options.
I like both of those. Communication, giving options, staying experimental. I think those are great pieces of advice. Thank you guys both so much. It looks like we are out of time, but I want to thank our panelists again, Sean and Krish. You guys were both amazing. It was so great to talk to both of you. I've been a huge fan of Milk and Honey for a long time, so it was totally an amazing birthday present to get to talk to you today. Krish, it's always fun hanging out with her. So let's do our giveaway. So I'd like to announce the winners of today's giveaway. They will win a $75 gift card to shop at Milk and Honey. And our winners today are Alicia Lang and Travis Baker. Congrats, guys. All right. We will follow up with you guys in an email with next steps. But if you didn't win this time, don't worry. We're still giving out $5 gift cards to Starbucks for everybody who attended, and a follow-up email that will go out tomorrow. And as you remember at the beginning of the show, I promised that there would be a surprise at the end of the show. Since it's my birthday and I love presents, I love giving presents, getting presents, I'm going to give away 20 of these amazing ShipStation Ship Outside the Box community mugs.
Very nice.
20 random registration, people who registered and attended. So I will also be sending those emails out separately tomorrow. So 20 lucky people will get to get a very nice fireside mug. So that's my exciting news. So thank you again to everyone who attended. We are doing a Ship and Sip coffee chat every month online. So if you or somebody that you know would like to be nominated as a highlighted user, please reach out to me on LinkedIn or email the events team at events@shipstation.com. We will see you all next time. And thank you again for all of your time. Take care, guys.